Hello, my name is Agnieszka Pikulicka-Wilczewska and this is Turan Tales, a podcast about Central Asia. It delves into stories of people, politics, social change and more, and is part of my newsletter which you can support on Substack. Welcome and be my guest in the journey to Central Asia. Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Agnieszka Pikulicka and I'm the founder of Turan Tales, which is a podcast about Central Asia. We have a weekly show about issues related to the region and also publish monthly audio documentaries for which we received a grant from the International Press Institute. So this is what we do, and this is our first live event. I hope not the last one, because like one of my goals here in Central Asia is also to build a community of people who are interested in the same things that I'm interested in, obviously. So Central Asia, and to build a community of people who can just, exchange information and gather together to talk about things that are important for the region. So for this first live talk, I chose this moment because we have a double celebration. The first celebration is that Turan Tales is turning 1. So for me, it's like a big first step. We are 1 year old. We already know who we are. We have like a small but really dedicated team of people who are creating, I think, a very unique product. Well, media. Right? And so that is like the first reason I wanted to celebrate. And the second reason I wanted to celebrate, obviously, is because today is the International Women's Day. And since we are in Kazakhstan, I decided to invite my friend and a local Kazakh blogger and feminist, Aisulu Toyshibek.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Today we'll be talking about Kazakh women across centuries, from the yurt to digital resistance. And before we start, just one quick thing. Turan Tales is a small independent media project. In a large part, we rely on donations from our listeners. So if you would like to support us, in case you would like to make us a birthday present, here are a few options. So you can either subscribe to us on Substack or donate on Buy Me a Coffee. Since this is our birthday, it's probably Buy Me a Prosecco. So that's what I can suggest. Or just donate via Kaspi. We don't have like this official QR code yet, but it's coming. Anyway, thank you so much. And let's start.
First of all, happy birthday to Turan Tales, and shout out to Agnieszka to doing all these things. And it's very important to have English-speaking media. To tell the stories from Central Asia and from Kazakhstan is very important for me. And I'm honored to be part of this anniversary special. And Turan Tales Jasasın. So let's roll.
Thank you. So let's go back in time in the beginning and think about the old nomadic societies in Kazakhstan. What was the role of a woman in the yurt? Do we know what were the traditional roles of men and women in a Kazakh household?
So I have this common idea that if you live in a nomadic way, every people is countable because life is tough. You have to move, you have to work, you have to create all these things to make your aul sustainable. And so we have this narrative about the Kazakh woman being very empowered, but I personally don't really care about it because it doesn't really help me in my modern life. And it's something that I really wanted to confront by being here and talking to you and answering this question that you shared with me earlier, because I know this narrative is very popular within the Kazakh people and in Kazakhstan, but does it really matter? I don't think so, because it doesn't relative to my modern life. That's great. Whatever way they lived in yurtas several hundred years ago, great. Good for them. But for me, I want my rights today. I want equality today. And it's something that I really care about. It's not about how it used to be, but how it is today. I think it's very dangerous path to follow because we see how like some powers, let's say, use this narrative to draw attention from what is really happening with women today. And I encourage everyone to leave it behind and let the, historians and anthropologists do their work and tell us how it used to be. But let's focus on our rights today and our safety today, because as a woman, I was born and raised in Kazakhstan. I'm 31 years old, and I don't really feel safe or fulfilled with all my possibilities. And I live in Almaty. Like, I have very privileged way of living here. And yeah, it's something that I think we should focus on and talk more about it. And yeah, I stand on this.
Okay, so we will not talk about that. No, I mean, I completely get your point, and I think we will get to talk about the situation of women in Kazakhstan a little bit more later. But if we just can go back to this narrative that you don't like, so what is it then? So what is the narrative about the empowered Kazakh women in the yurt?
Yeah, so they say we had very strong women who carried the household. We still have this kind of woman today. And yeah, maybe in some ways, traditions and history that we know really gave the woman more power over their lives. But I don't really think that it was in the way we know this concept today. So it was hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Of course, the way of freedom and the very concept of freedom and people's rights and the value of their lives was very different from today's concept. So yeah, I think women in Kazakh society, they were the big part of the communal life. Yeah, that's for sure. But I'm not really an expert to comment deeply on this topic. So I will just stop here. I don't know, did I
It's fine. It's perfect.
Thank you. I don't want to disappoint you today.
No, you never disappoint me. Don't worry. It's okay. I started with this question because we often maybe compare Central Asian societies, the life of the settled populations like Uzbeks, for example, where the role of a woman was obviously much less visible in the, let's say, community life, and Kazakh nomads, right, where the role of a woman was relatively more important. But let's maybe focus on later times and let's move further. So when did this kind of typical communal life in the yurt end? Did it end with the Soviet collectivization and the moment that was very painful in Kazakh history, or was it earlier? How did it happen?
I think it slowly started to change when the colonization started, because Russian Empire started building the cities or towns to secure their power in Kazakhstan. So it started very slowly, but inevitably. And of course, with this revolution that happened in 1917, it just rapidly changed. In the time of Tsar, it was very slow and different. And I think Kazakh people had more autonomy, I guess. But yeah, when Soviet Union happened, it was really very quick and very painful, and with a lot of sacrifices from people in Kazakhstan. Yeah, it changed a lot. And of course, the life of women changed a lot. So they faced not only what happened in political life and how government dictated the way of living, but also a lot of loss among people because of it's a civil war. Second, it's collectivization and famine and everything. So yeah, and it was hardest on women, of course, women and children and elder people.
During the Soviet times, we were always kind of told that women are liberated, right? That the Soviet Union liberated women. But what it looked like in reality, were Soviet women in Kazakhstan liberated, as the propagandists would like us to think, or was the reality a little bit different?
I think everything that came with Soviet Union, it had to be the price to pay. And for women, it was also very high price. Yes, they gave women some rights, but they also viewed women as a labor force. First of all, everyone had to work in the Soviet Union because they need to like put the whole country, the very vast area, through this modernization. So yeah, they said we give women like emancipation of Eastern women, how they said it back in the days. But I don't really agree that it was 100% beneficial for women, because women also had their second shift after the work. And for mothers, it was very difficult. And for women, it was very difficult. We did a podcast a few years ago with Butter Foundation. It's called Kazakh Roses, about 5 women in Kazakh history. They're all from art, actresses, painters, singers. And they all had very similar things in their lives. So very young, they lost their families. They went through the orphanage. And it was really tough. And you see them and you see, wow, and they could make it through this. But how many were lost? So we don't really know their stories. So I'm very skeptical about this narrative about how Soviets emancipate women here. And I don't really know how it was in Kazakhstan, but I know the Hujum in Uzbekistan, it was very like rough on women as well, because they were like between the past conservatives and their families and the women of their society. And from the other side, there were like Soviet politicians who just created all these beautiful and very profound slogans about how they create new people, new society and everything. But I think we also should be very aware of romanticizing of all these narratives about the past. So we have to acknowledge both sides of what had happened to women.
And can I ask about your family history, about women in your family? Did you see this, let's say, emancipation during the Soviet times on the example of your family members?
Of course, all women in my family, they could go to school, then universities, they had secure workplaces. But I can't say that they lived like fully, because they faced the same harmful social norms that was not only part of Kazakh society, but also like broader Soviet societies. So they struggled of body shaming. They struggled from slut shaming. They couldn't really be free. So yeah, I don't say that it's like only black and white, but I feel sorry for women in my family because they didn't have the opportunities. Of course, they could make an abortion, and it's something that not all women around the world at that moment had right to. They had their opportunities, but they also had their restrictions. And yeah, I feel sorry for them, actually.
So what was the role of a man in the family? In your family, or in a typical Kazakh family during the Soviet times, was this patriarchy still so pronounced as like it was, for example, in Uzbekistan, which I know much more about than I know about Kazakhstan. So was this patriarchal system as strong as it was before, or did it somehow change with the new ideology?
Of course, men had the last word in everything. And my mom, just yesterday, we had this conversation and she said, I couldn't like be equal to him because they just like once upon a time, they bought dacha. And when my mom said, okay, I will sign some papers, they said, no, your husband has to come and only then we'll give him these papers because you are not like the master or whatever. So you're not an owner. So go away. And, we still have these harmful social norms. It wasn't created like in a couple of years back. It always was there. It's not like independence happened and Kazakh said, okay, we don't need all these beautiful things, human rights and everything. It always had been a part of our lives. It didn't disappear with Soviets. And I think it even got worse, actually, because the Soviet structure was built on the violence. And this violence didn't disappear. It's still very rooted in our social life, in our families. So, yeah, in my family, so I grew up in the 90s, in the 2000s. And of course, I see the different part of my family. Me and my siblings, we have different version of our parents, the same two people, but they weren't the same for them and for me. So when I grew up, of course, my mom ruled the house, obviously. So maybe you heard that the Kazakh woman, the elder they got, the more power they have. So yeah, my mom rules like household even today, but it was different for her when she was in the very beginning of the marriage because men had all the power and these harmful social norms made it really difficult for them, not only for my mom, but for like every woman of their generation that I know.
So what happened with the independence, actually? How the position of a woman in a Kazakh household changed with the independence and the new socio-political, socio-economic system?
Yeah, so we live in capitalism, like it or not. And of course, the more economic freedoms you have, the more freedom you have also because you have opportunity to move out and like work and have your own money and have more freedom to like rule your life. So I think, yeah, in the 90s, the shift was immersed, but also there was the crisis and people didn't really had jobs. So I don't know how to say. It was difficult for women as well because also a lot of men couldn't like handle all these major shifts in the society. And, the suicides were like crazy. But I think things got better. So people could like start their business and women who are very proactive with it really succeed. We can see that the stories of the women who built from like scratch their businesses, which is cool, especially with the in the cities where more opportunities like appear to people. It was difficult, I guess, because I was still a baby in that time. But of course, the more access you have for money to the labor, the more secure you can be from your family. So you can separate from your family, don't live with your parents, and just start your life from the beginning. So it's better for women, I think so.
And how would you describe the feminist or the women's rights movement of the past 2 decades? What has changed? Because we see the emergence of new organizations, NGOs, also Western funded, and how it changed over the past 2 decades.
So for me, I see the feminist movement in Kazakhstan as like two forces. The first one is like the organization that was created back in the 90s. They support women through the shelters and everything. So they work more institutional and they work with government as well. And the second one is like feminist, like grassroots initiatives. So they always work there and they're separate, but they work on like the same issue, like women's rights and gender equality. So the first, I think, in the 90s, we got a lot of like organizations like NGOs who work, and some of them are still present and still like active nowadays. I don't really know a lot about grassroots initiatives in the 90s and in early of 2000s. So I know a little bit more about the recent things.
Yeah, let's talk about the more recent times finally. Sorry. Sorry for torturing you for so long.
Sorry, no, it's fine. I just don't really think that I'm qualified on talking like about 90s and yeah, sorry.
So the past decade or the times that you know, what can you say about the women's rights movement in Kazakhstan? What is it like? What is it like to be a feminist in Kazakhstan?
I think it's the only way to be in Kazakhstan is to be a feminist. And unfortunately, like 10 years ago, I wasn't really aware about gender equality. So of course, as a lot of like young women and men in the beginning in 2012, I thought, oh, how can we say about economic equality and pay gaps when a lot of women don't have access to education, they live in auls, and they suffer from violence. And so I just had this idea that some issues comes first. It's like safety and everything. And the second, okay, we can deal with it later. And hopefully grassroots feminists and initiatives helped me to change my view, and I became more aware about gender equality in Kazakhstan. So we still have a lot of grassroots initiatives who are active. And I think it changed through the last 10 years, but I think they're very sustainable. They're still here. And I know that today they celebrate somewhere in Almaty. They even have like stand up or something, but I couldn't come there because I'm here. So I think it's very important to have this heritage of the grassroots initiatives. And sorry, what was your question? I think I just start wandering like in my thoughts.
Exactly what you're saying. So what is your view of the feminist movement over the past decade when you have been kind of involved or when you became a thinking feminist?
Oh, they did a lot of very crucial work for awareness about women's rights, gender equality, and they also work not only among people, but also with the government, and they like do all the rappers. Shout out to all of them because I think we need to do everything that we can with everything that we have on a different scales. And one day it will like bring the changes. So I think the biggest was what we gained was the march in 2021 after the COVID. It was like big celebration, and unfortunately it didn't happen again. But we still got like gathering once, and then they shut it down.
So say a little bit more about the march. What was this initiative about?
So we got the committee of March 8. It was the organization. It wasn't an organization. It was committee with different activists and organizations that stepped in, and they united to create this event. And they did very well. And they even like got this from Akimat, like, you can do this. It was very difficult for them, as I know, but they succeed. And it was really something that gave us a lot of hope because it was very first time when we could march on the streets of our city, our beloved Almaty. And I was there with my friends, and we felt that change is happening and we're part of this movement. It was very inspiring. And we unfortunately didn't know what's coming next because in the last 4 years, everything changed like really quick. And I couldn't say that it was for the best because then they said no more marches. You can just stay there and have your slogans and posters, but you cannot march. It didn't feel like a fail, but it was very difficult to face it. That we had it so close and we were there last year, but now the possibilities of women to be visible on the one day in the year, it's shrinking like just in front of us.
Sorry, just to remind the listeners that 1 year after the march was after Kantar, right? So after the Bloody January, so a very important event in Kazakhstan's history. So do you think that the Bloody January somehow influenced the fact that you couldn't organize the march?
I never thought about it actually, but I think a little. I think the bigger part was because women could mobilize very quickly. Because you see that in Kazakhstan, femicide is a very big issue. And I think the government saw the opportunity of women mobilization among the country, like in the different cities, and they didn't like it because the more political women are, so other groups will join them. So I think they feared women because they started to making these all connections between different groups of women, like mothers, women who lost their sons in army, women who don't have place to live with a lot of children. And I think they saw the threat in this little movement of women. They said, oh, they have like a lot of potential, and they shut it down. I think that's why.
So you said that the past 4 or 5 years have been not very good. Maybe describe the situation in Kazakhstan with regards to women's rights movement after Kantar.
What I saw is that they started to hijacking the agenda of women's rights. I know it happened in Kiev earlier. They had this issue with pro-governmental forces that were like, we are for women's rights, we are for gender equality, but they were like pro-governmental and they get this close ties. And I saw something similar here in Kazakhstan. So we had this group of very aggressive women that they really hijacked the agenda, and they had their own 8th of March in the Gandhi Park with the music, with posters and everything. And it was wild. They also put the Irina Kayratovna song. It was like, what? Why do you use this very masculine symbols on this very day? So they also had this, fur of animal, and they were very aggressive. And grassroots initiatives and activists, they just stood there as a part of this gathering, and they didn't allow them to join this meeting even. So yeah, I think that was the very pivotal moment for movement because the government tried to hijack 8th of March.
Just make it like a nice event for children and families. Is this
Kind of. So you see, we have this 8th of March and women can celebrate their little rights that they have from us. But you cannot just speak on behalf of queer women, and you cannot speak about femicide. It's something that they just want to avoid. But yeah, you have this celebration, have your flowers, have your dancing. And Irina Kairatovna, it was like very surreal.
Can we talk about like concrete cases that have mobilized women in Kazakhstan over the past couple of years? One of such cases was the murder of Saltanat Nukenova, who was killed by her husband in a cafe. A husband who was very well connected, a politician. So what does it say about Kazakhstan that a man can kill a woman in a cafe without anyone interfering?
You want like honest answer?
Please.
We're so fucked up actually, because if someone with such a power can do such thing in a public place, so what I think we all have PTSD from this event. I still remember the very moment when I saw and read this news about what had happened, and it was really crazy. And I think this event changed a lot in how women in Kazakhstan started to see themselves and how they started to see how little they have to do with their lives in Kazakhstan. So after that moment, I was really scared because I said, oh, wow, I don't really safe anymore, even with my partner. Because I don't know if I will ever be safe in this country, not only in Kazakhstan, everywhere in the world, we know that such cases, they are real. If we want to see the other side of what had happened, of course, it changed a lot and it mobilized women, and we finally could unite under these circumstances of this femicide in Kazakhstan, and it changed a lot in the perspective of how we see each other, how we support each other, and of course, especially since the whole process was broadcasted on YouTube, it was very important for us to see how men can behave and how they can portray them as I am the victim in this situation actually. And the price was very high also, but yeah, I think it was crucial for women movement here in Kazakhstan.
So can we maybe, for people who are not really familiar with this case, can we say a little bit more about who Bishimbayev was? So the person who committed the crime and what actually happened. And because the fact that he is in prison also tells us something about Kazakhstan, right? It is a little victory in the end, or not?
I don't know. For me, it didn't feel like real victory because, a lot of people like him are still free and we don't even know about what they do behind the closed doors. So Қуандық Бишімбаев is so-called Jurtun balası, very successful. He was Minister of Economy and he studied abroad via Bolashak program. And he was a very successful young man, and he quit the job in government, but he had business, money, power, everything average man in Kazakhstan could dream of. And he did that to his wife, his partner, and got caught. I don't really feel like it was victory. Of course, it was a big step for us, obviously. We got this discussion, public discussion and everything, but we still have this big issue with femicide. Nuray Sirikbay, it was few months ago, 2 months ago, the stalking case, and she was brutally murdered. We get a lot of things happening as we speak. And I think we need more actions, but less victims. So women don't have to die this brutally for us to do something. We don't have to bleed out to make country see us as a human, as someone who deserves to live, to dream, to build their future, you know. And yeah, I think we still need more action on this case. And Solna's brother, he's doing a lot of things with gender equality and safety for women. But I don't really see the proactive actions from government. So they just have this committee of, I don't know, this very conservative propaganda about families. And yeah, I don't really feel that things have changed.
Can you think of any other public cases like this one that mobilized women and mobilized people in Kazakhstan when it comes to women's
They are
rights?
not at the same level as the Sultanat's case, but the recent one, like Yana Likadimova case and Nuray case, was like really big.
So what happened? Can we talk about that?
Do you really want to go down this road? You know, I have to confess, I don't really consume news as active as I used to. So I might not know all the details. So in case of Nuray, there was like stalking and she did what she had to do. They wrote to police, like this strange man, he's following me. But police didn't take action on this man, and he kidnapped her and he murdered her. She was 21 years old. Yeah, and that's what happened. And people were really angry because do we really need all these laws if they don't work, actually? Because yes, we can create as much laws as we want, and they said, okay, we did the change, but people's mind didn't change. And this policeman, they said, okay, I don't really see the problem here. Maybe they just laughed about it. Ha ha, he likes her that much. And they didn't do their work, actually. And she lost her life. I cannot even imagine how frightening it is, like, to face the stalker and just to go through everything that she went through. So, of course, after all these discussions in the internet and threads, I love threads. It's a phenomenon in Kazakhstan, how people mobilize on threads. I think it must be studied. But yeah, they said, oh my God, we need to punish this policeman. But I don't really think that they will sit in a prison for what they did. And they did like nothing. They let it happen. Can we please keep this very...
Of course. Well, I'm not sure if this question will be as frustrating or not. Hopefully not. But we've seen some bad moves on the part of the government recently. So the anti-LGBT propaganda law that was implemented recently and that came into force in March. We are also going to have a new constitution, which was created very hastily and without really any proper consultations with society. How do you think this will affect women's rights in Kazakhstan?
I think it will affect us really badly. I told you before we started recording that I had this paranoia that one day they will ban an abortion in Kazakhstan. And it's something that I think about it a lot because I see it coming, actually. Because, Russia has, unfortunately, huge influence on our president and on Akorda. And it's really dangerous to follow those steps because in some aspects, Kazakhstan is actually even worse than Russia. And of course, when some people lose their rights, to be themselves, it affects everyone, even the straightest Kazakh guy who exists in Kazakhstan somewhere. It will affect us really badly, I think. But I don't really know how can I change it. It is something that really frustrates me a lot. Of course, I will go on a referendum and vote. But you see, they do this in a parallel. So from their one side, they have this law, anti-LGBTQ plus propaganda. And in the parallel, they gave away our right to speak. We just cannot go outside and say, you know what, I don't really like it. Maybe you should go away, far away from our country. And we cannot do that because you will just end up in a prison. And I don't really blame people who are afraid because we see the cases everywhere. And we see how Marat Jolonbaev is still in a prison and they treat him very, very bad. It's something that is happening now, and not only with him. Also, we have a lot of female activists and journalists who are in prison, like Aygirim Tleojan and many more. So I think we must be creative in the way we speak and in the way we show our resistance. And I actually think we should take care of ourselves and of people we love, because we need this strength, we need this resilience in us to keep going, because they come and go, but we will stay. And we must be healthy, in a good mental health also, to bring these changes. But we cannot go outside and march and have our even pickets. So they also like put people in prison for just doing something so similar. You don't affect anyone by standing there with a poster, but they're so afraid that they just put you in a prison, which is ridiculous. Yeah, so we have to take care of ourselves and brace ourselves to go through this. It's very bad, but we need ourselves in a resource and in a state of flow, I don't know how to say, to keep pushing.
This is something that has always kind of surprised me, because Kazakhstan has such a vibrant civil society and so many activists, so many people who have opinions about everything. How is it possible that it's so easy to, crush it?
No, you cannot crush the spirit. So I think civil society in Kazakhstan will live as it lived through Nazarbayev's regime. Back in the days, it was like savage. He didn't stop on putting people in jail. He just, So I think civil society will stand strong and will carry on. But you see, as an example, Kyrgyzstan, it was like the most democratic state in Central Asia. But unfortunately, in a couple of years, things has changed. And so it's very fragile, Everything could change like in a minute. And we also see what is happening in the United States. So I think we will carry on, but it will be in a different way.
Thank you so much. It was a very, very interesting talk, and I wish you and all women and all men too, obviously more equality, more freedom, and resilience for the difficult times lying ahead. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I like rapping in a microphone. Sorry, I hope I didn't bother you to death with my chaotic thoughts, but it was nice to reflect on this topic. And we must stay healthy and happy to bring changes.
Thank you. For everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming. I see that so many new people came when we were talking. Just to remind you, this is like the first birthday of Turan Tales. So I hope we're going to celebrate together now once this talk is over. And if you want to support us, obviously, here you can do it by subscribing to Turan Tales on Substack, where you've got options to support us monthly with like a small subscription. Then we've got also Buy Me a Coffee, which for today it has changed the name to Buy Me a Prosecco. And there you can make like small donations or get a membership or just donate via Kaspi. So thank you so much for coming, and let's celebrate. That's it for today. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Turan Tales on Substack. I look forward to meeting you there and on my newsletter's social media.